Today's video is sponsored by Currently, delivering EV charging to you at home, the office, or wherever you want. Get 30 days of EV charging delivery service for free by using the code EVOLVED at the link below.
This was not the video that I expected to be making right now. And it's probably not the video that you expect to be watching right now. We were on our way to Utah to drive the Cadillac Lyriq SUV for the very first time. We were originally going to fly, then our flight was cancelled, and because Adira Tal, the Transport Evolved F150 Lightning Lariat, was already here, we just said screw it, let's drive. And Cadillac very graciously agreed to push us back onto a later wave, which was due to be Saturday and Sunday. It's now Saturday the 25th, and yesterday, while we were on the road, the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade. This is not a political video, do not worry. We have a policy on the channel to not attend events or support things that are taking place in states where someone's right to choose what happens to their body is in jeopardy. Because of that, we have turned around and headed home. And I know that lots of people watching this would want us to go and drive that SUV anyway, but we've spoken to Cadillac, we've spoken to the team there. They are very understanding and sympathetic to our editorial policy and has promised us a Cadillac Lyriq SUV early in August for us to drive and review like we normally would. So instead, we are here talking about the Ford F-150 Lightning Lariat and our trip thus far and what it's been like on the road. The first thing I feel that I need to talk about is charging and charging reliability here in Oregon, but also in Idaho when we were traveling through it. Now, I've been driving electric vehicles for a really long time. I've been using CCS Electrify America charging stations for as long as Electrify America has been in existence. But what I haven't really encountered before today is the increasing level of unreliability that we're now seeing across the EA network. Here at this particular location, only one charger is actually giving us a decent amount of power. Next to Michael behind the camera is a 350 kilowatt capable CCS rapid charging station that is currently only outputting 31 kilowatts. That's 11 kilowatts more than this truck can theoretically pull on AC charging, not DC, AC charging. We are currently plugged into a 150 kilowatt capable unit. Because it's the extended range version of the F-150 Lightning, this truck is capable of up to 170 kilowatts of DC quick charging, but right now it's maxed out at about 150. When it gets to about 60 or 70%, it will drop. But the charging curve has been very good and in line with what other people have reported. The biggest issue, though, is that EA's stations are becoming increasingly unreliable. Now, we've spoken to Electrify America several times in the last couple of weeks and on this trip. And what we're being told is that they have no parts. They have parts availability issues, which is all very well and good. Everyone runs out of parts once in a while. But you would assume that a company that is expanding its charger provision across the US, that is increasing the number of rapid charging stations that it operates, would have a proportional increase in the number of spare parts it has on hand. I know there is a chip shortage. I know there is a global parts supply issue right now. But it seems a bit bizarre that a company as large as Electrify America, with such a large investment as Electrify America, doesn't have a central location of parts that it can ship out to fix chargers when they fail. Not that far from here, probably about 200 miles further into Oregon, there is a charging site at a place called Hermiston. There is not a single functional charging station there. Worse still, it is the only charging station for about 100 miles in either direction, and it's just before Pendleton, where you have to climb up several thousand feet to get up onto the high plateau to get to La Grande. For most people, it is a major issue. Now, this truck yesterday, we were halfway when we realized there was an issue. And what we decided we were going to do was slow down and crawl up the hill. We did manage to make it, but it was not a particularly good experience. So EA, you get a negative scorecard from us on this one. The only other thing that I would point out is that EA doesn't seem to have the level of technically trained staff that it once did. In the early days, you would phone up EA, be quite quickly connected to someone who knew their stuff and could give you some quite nerdy, intricate details about what was going on with the network. You could try and problem solve together, and very often you were able to get a non-functioning charging station working and running again. Now, you're kind of SOL unless you happen to get an older trained member of staff who's been with the company for a while and knows what they are talking about. But recently I've heard several horror stories of people who've rung out and spoken to team members in the customer care department who really don't know what's going on with the charging network or how the charging stations really operate. Luckily yesterday we did have a fairly well-versed member of staff when we rang up, but we quickly ascertained that there was an issue with that particular location and we were able to go somewhere else. The next issue we ran into was actually with Ford's charge network, the Ford Blue Oval charging network, which displays in the truck charging stations nearby. There were a couple of charging stations that didn't show up on here, primarily charge point ones. Now that might have been an issue on my end. I'll admit I may have not set the preferences up correctly, and I think that's probably what happened. But it did mean that we weren't aware that there was an alternative charging station nearby to Hermiston. Otherwise, we would have been royally screwed.
There's more in a second, but first a message from today's video sponsors. Carlie, they'll help you stay charged up wherever you are. Carlie is an EV charging delivery app that brings your electric car the power it needs wherever you happen to be. Currently operating in Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Jose and Dallas, Carlie can help you bust rapid charging queues and ensure that you've got the charge you need to get where you want, when you want, and it means you can finally own an EV with confidence, even if you don't have off-street charging and parking at home. With plans starting from under $5 a month, there are a range of Carlie plans to help you dump the pump and stay charged up. Simply download the Carlie app and give it a go. Tell Carlie what your car is, how much charge you need, and Carlie's trained drivers do the rest, delivering your EV a rapid charge wherever your car is, and there's no need to be with your vehicle. Transport Evolved viewers can get a 30-day free EV charging trial with Carlie by using the promo code EVOLVED when setting up your account. Give them a try today by downloading the app, and thanks to Carlie for sponsoring this video.
We are back on the road after having stopped for a charge at TNT Country Store. Even though we had to use a 150 kilowatt charger, the charge time there was really very quick. I think we were there about 20 minutes or so. We weren't very empty when we pulled up. Of the just about 1,000 miles that we've done since I left my house yesterday morning, Blue Cruise has helped us for the majority of that. And for those who don't know, Blue Cruise is Ford's semi-autonomous driver assistance system. It uses infrared eye tracking to make sure that you're paying attention to the road ahead, and on special highways that it's carefully mapped, you can take your hands off the wheel completely and let the car do most of the work. You just have to remain alert, and you keep having to look forwards. If you look down, if you look in your rearview mirror too long, the system nags you. If you ignore the nagging, it will ever so lightly tap the brakes to kind of bring you back. Right now I've got my hands on the wheel because we're going through some twisties here on I-84 just in eastern Oregon, and the system is not confident that it can do it on its own. So what it's doing is it's asking me to hold the steering wheel, and for the most part the car is doing the steering, or rather the truck is doing the steering. I've just got my hands very lightly on the steering wheel, but Blue Cruise is doing the majority of the work. And in a minute, when we hit a nice straight piece of road, Blue Cruise will go back to hands-off mode. It says hands-free. I can take my hands off, and just relax my hands in my lap, or, cross them on across my side, or, do the Macarena or whatever. And for the most part, Blue Cruise has been great, because most roads in Idaho and Oregon are very straight, at least once you get out of the mountains. We've been able to do the majority of this without touching the wheel. And there've been very few Blue Cruise interventions required. I haven't had to grab the steering wheel because the truck has done something dangerous. I've only taken over when the truck has asked me to take over. And I think that's a really good sign that this feature is actually very advanced. However, after our second charge stop this morning, just as we decided to head back to Oregon, Blue Cruise decided it wasn't going to activate. So the symptoms are this. You're driving along, you activate Blue Cruise, and the dash says, Blue Cruise is active, follow instructions. You have to say OK, press the OK button. And you try and let go of the steering wheel. It doesn't display the hands-free message on the left-hand side of your dash. It just displays what we've now got, which is just the range and the power meter, which is what you have when you're not in hands-free mode. And while the indication down in the bottom right-hand corner of the dash shows your truck with a little bubble around it, which means all the sensors are working and are active, the truck doesn't actually then ever tell you to take your hands off the wheel. And if you try and take your hands off the wheel, it then gets really upset with you and says, put your hands back on the wheel. And even if you're looking forwards, I found it was nagging me to look forwards. So the system had got itself in a bit of a kerfuffle, and we drove probably about 200 miles with me with my hands on the wheel just to get to the next charging station. And in the past, of a decade or so of driving EVs, I've noticed that whenever there are weird electrical problems with a high-end vehicle, sometimes disconnecting the 12-volt battery, letting it sit for 30 seconds, and then reconnecting that 12-volt battery is enough to reset the system. And that's exactly what happened in this case. We crawled around in the front of the F-150 Lightning, took out the flight cases that were in the front, lifted off the cover that hides the battery. We disconnected one of the terminals on the 12-volt battery. Obviously the truck wasn't on, it wasn't charging. We reconnected everything, and then everything was fine. Now we're back to hands-free operation and everything is good. So if you are experiencing that, that is a very simple and quick fix. And again, if you are an EV driver, I've said this before and I'll say it again, you should always carry around a wrench or a spanner that is the right size to disconnect the 12-volt battery in your car. Not the big battery that you use for driving along, the little 12-volt battery, because oodles and oodles of problems, be it charging station errors or infotainment system issues or glitches with telematics, or as in this case, a problem with the advanced driver assistance system, can be solved by hard rebooting the car. And the easiest way to do that is to disconnect the power, wait for 30 seconds to a minute, reconnect it, and hopefully that works again. I know that some cars are coming to market without 12-volt accessory batteries, and that worries me. I guess you could just pull a fuse. That would also work. Plug and Charge has been super reliable. After I disconnected the 12-volt battery, I did have to try twice to get it to activate. Also, after disconnecting the 12-volt battery, the hood wouldn't close because the truck didn't know that the hood was open, because I lifted up the hood, disconnected the 12-volt battery, and then reconnected it. And the way I was able to get that system back in sync was to actually manually, very gently bring it down. It closed itself over the last sort of little bit, and then I was able to operate it normally. In terms of ride quality, the F-150 is like riding on a cloud most of the time, unless you go over a bump like we just did, and then it becomes quite a bouncy castle. It's not glued to the road at that point. It bounces, and there's a lot of flex because it's a big heavy truck. It's got a large amount of suspension travel and physics. This whole touchscreen display system here has been great. One thing I absolutely love, and I don't think anyone's talked about it, is that you can have your truck bed view permanently up while you are driving along. Alternatively, you can have the rear of your truck available. I am looking ahead, thank you Ford, See, that's the nagging system. It's very good, and I'd much rather it nagged me that much than not enough. So you can see out the hitch. You can also, if you are towing, look at the camera that's pointing down at where your tow hitch would be. My tow hitch is currently not on the truck, but this is a direct view down from above to make sure that your hitch is behaving itself. I like the auto-dimming mirrors. I've got an auto-dimming mirror here, one here, and one here. I don't like being blinded at night time by other road users. I will admit that I'm a lot higher than most road users now, so that might mean that I am now the person doing the dazzling, but this truck does have its own take on matrix headlights that are dynamically adjusting based on where the wheels are pointing, so it'll illuminate the correct side of the road for a curve, but it will also detect other vehicles and try to change the light pattern so it doesn't dazzle other people. And because this truck sits so high off the ground and because it's so large, I think that is an essential technology that frankly I think all cars should have. Michael can show you behind, we've put the seats up so that we can put all of the camera gear in here, because right now we do not have a tonneau cover for the bed that is lockable. Our goal is to put in a bed rug, which we're going to be doing in the next few weeks, and we'll also put in a retractable power tonneau cover with the ability to link it to these home link buttons. That means that when we come down to places like Fully Charged Live or we're doing other road trips, we can keep at least some of the gear in the truck bed securely, and so that we can then get 3 more people in the truck if we need it. There isn't really much more to tell you about Adira Tal and the F150 Lightning experience thus far, other than to say I think this truck is very, very well put together. But what I do need to tell you about is what happened to Artemis, my Chevrolet Bolt EV, because some of you picked up after I made a few comments on Twitter. When we knew that Adira Tal had been made and was on their way to us, we went to a local, well-known used car specialist on the east side of Portland and said, hey, we've purchased cars from them before, we've sold cars to them before. Said, hey, we want to sell our Bolts because we're getting the F150. How about it? And they said, yep. They gave us a great deal. And we basically said, done, there and then on the spot. We went back to the house and we parked up my car and said we wouldn't drive it until the truck arrived, and then we would only drive my car to the dealership to hand over the keys. And we were good to that word. We didn't travel anywhere in the Bolt. We used my wife's car for everything for basically 3 weeks. On Monday last week, when we got the call that Adira Tal was ready, we got in my car and we drove down the hill, and my car was behaving really weirdly. It didn't feel right. The steering didn't feel right. I got down into the local town and I'd started to smell brake dust, and then we went a little bit further and I stopped and there was smoke coming off the front wheels. Now, the wheels and the discs were very, very hot, or rotors as you call them in America, and they were locked. So we managed to limp to the Ford dealership, which was only a couple of miles down the road at this point. The Ford dealership were very grateful and said, look, you can leave your Bolt here as long as you need to, no worries, we've got a large lot and not enough cars at the moment. And after we bought Adira Tal, the first thing we did was go to a local U-Haul and pick up a trailer, put Artemis on the back, and then drive across Portland with Artemis on the back of a trailer towed by Adira Tal. That's the first thing I did with my brand new truck. And of course we did talk to the dealership firsthand, and we said, hey, something's gone wrong with the brakes, we think they're just jammed. Tell us if you still want the car, and if you do, how much of a discount do you want us to give you? And we negotiated a good discount. They gave us a new figure and we said, great. Obviously they'll solve the brakes before selling the car, but it meant that we didn't have to worry about it. So we drove Artemis over and we signed the paperwork, and I was very sad saying goodbye to Artemis. I did cry. Sat at the wheel of my big truck and cried as I pulled away, because Artemis was an awesome car. Is an awesome car still. But that is what happened to Artemis. It's a very unceremonious way to leave the fleet. And maybe, just maybe, if you think that cars have feelings, anthropomorphizing things a little bit, Maybe she was just, sticking her heels in and saying, no, I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave. So that is the update. Obviously, that is it for this video. I'm driving, even though I've not got my hands on the wheel. I can't read out the list of amazing people on my right who support the channel. But you know what? If your name is on that list, know that you are amazing, and I'm very grateful to every single one of you, whether you are a $5 a month supporter, a $1 a month supporter, or a $100 a month supporter. Finally, we're going to try and make this video a bit of a fundraiser, so look out for the fundraiser button underneath. Everything that's happened in Utah, or that's happened in the Supreme Court, that Utah is now following through with threats of banning abortion because it has basically a trigger law that came into effect when the Supreme Court struck down Roe versus Wade. It's bad news for half of the population who no longer have control over what happens with a part of their body. And we feel very strongly about that, and we hope that you will consider supporting the charities that we are going to recommend in the next couple of days on the channel on some of our videos. So please do consider that. Additionally, if you'd like to support what we do, there are links below. You can support us through Patreon, you can support us through YouTube membership, you can send us Ko-fi, or you can buy some cool swag like the Bolt t-shirt that I'm currently wearing. And of course, do share this video with everybody and talk about it. And I'd love to know, if you are a Ford F-150 Lightning customer, what your experiences have been thus far, if you've got your truck, and if you haven't got your truck, where in the process are you? I will be back very soon, but until then, keep evolving.